Okay, aloha everyone. For all of our panelists, you can unmute yourselves and just double checking, are we live? Looks like we are live. So I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight, September 10th. It's Thursday night. I'm here in Hilo, Hawaii, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the second of a 10-part virtual town hall series that I'm hosting and doing throughout the entire month of September and October. And tonight's discussion is going to be on veterans issues here in Hawaii. I'm really happy for everyone who has joined us tonight. The panelists that we have are all accomplished individuals. They're all individuals that have served in our armed forces. They're all combat veterans. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to a good friend of mine, someone I served under in the Hawaii Air National Guard, and that would be Brigadier General Stan Osserman, who is our moderator this evening and will introduce our panelists. General Osserman, aloha.
Hey, aloha, Kai. Glad to be here tonight, and hope you're doing well. I've been watching your career over the last couple of years, and impressive. I knew your dad really well. Worked with him on a lot of energy issues on the Big Island, so you know, I've known your family quite a while too. And today we have a great set of panel members here. I'll start off with the highest ranking one being Tom, because he's a Marine, and I came from a Marine family, so Tom automatically outranks everybody. And I have the highest respect for anybody that's a Marine. That's a tough service to be in. So Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself, other than I found out recently you actually spent some time in the Big Island Police Department too, so we won't hold that against you.
That's correct.
But welcome on the panel, and give everyone a little bit of background on yourself.
So I grew up on the East Coast. I was an orphan, and I read a book when I was about 10 years old about the Marine Corps, and at that point I knew I wanted to be in the Marines. So when I graduated high school, I went straight into boot camp and never turned back. Didn't look over my shoulder. I just kept going forward. In 1980, I was an infantryman, so I did reconnaissance and some special ops, but always in a deployable unit. Never went to drill instructor duty. Never went to embassy duty. I was in a deployable unit my entire time in the Marine Corps, and then I had the reserve time. But right after Desert Storm, Desert Shield and Desert Storm, we've been deployed for 7 months to Okinawa. Our plane touched down in Hawaii, and 4 days later we were in Saudi Arabia. So we didn't get to see our family for a very long time. That was August 15th of 1990. And we stayed for the duration, and it was right after I got back, a month after I got back, I decided, well, am I gonna stay in active or get out, retire, stay in the reserves? I chose reserves, and I went straight into the Hawaii County Police Department. Took the test for Honolulu and Hawaii County, passed both tests, flipped a coin. My wife's a Kailua girl, and I came to the Big Island. And I was, after my recruit training and my field training, I went straight to Waimea and stayed there for the entire career. I was on actually, I helped to start the SWAT team, the special response team. I was one of the first 12 members of the Hawaii County SWAT team back in '98.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and 4 kids went to Kamehameha schools. I'm very thankful to Kamehameha schools. I'm very versed on Hawaiian history, and I'll keep my mouth closed about that. We're here to talk about veterans issues, but I fall in line with Kai's belief, I think.
All right. And Deb Lewis, Colonel Deb Lewis, retired Army, and I didn't have too much time to catch up on her background, but what I did learn was pretty doggone impressive. And the one thing that I would highlight from my perspective is having females in the military was a novelty probably when she started, and so she probably grew up in the military during the most transformational time for women in our military. So Deb, thanks for participating today. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. Yes, it was not a fun time, but it also was the tail end of the Vietnam era. And that had its own challenges. And I was in the first class with women from West Point. So that was a social revolution, and the injustices that we faced, and the just hatred at times, but also terrific leaders at points that helped us get through it. And we started with 119, we ended with 62 at the end of 4 years out of cadet base of 4,400 cadets. And now they've had over 5,000 women graduate from the military academy. So I'm really, someone's got to go first. So it might as well be tough. I grew up in a military family, moved around my whole life, and got lucky and married this part Hawaiian, my husband, Doug Adams. And I actually was assigned to Hawaii twice on Oahu. And I was hoping to get back. I love Hawaii. And he wanted to come back, and he had to get out of the military because they were going to send him back after we met. So he had to get out of the military because they wouldn't send me back at that time. So I had to go do things like 9/11 in the Pentagon, go off and do my combat tour like each of you in Iraq, and where I did engineering construction. I had a $2 billion construction program when we had the surge. That was a lot of excitement there, and a lot of loss and sacrifice from the people who worked with me. And then my husband, when I retired, we did a bicycle tour where we got to go to all 50 states, and all the way we asked, where's the ideal place to live? It turned out to be Hilo. So we retired here after moving 31 times, me 34, 35 times for my husband, Doug. And we've never looked back. You see the people here every day. We're meeting people or being with people who care about the world. They care about our community and care about our veterans. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. And I wasn't going to do veteran things, I can say. I'm now chair of the Veterans Day Parade. Ben is now our commander of VFW. I'm going to be the state commander next year if all goes as planned. But you take on what you need to take on. You see a need and people jump in, and there's so much support. We're helping our veterans at Yukio Kutsu right now. There's a whole team of people that are doing that, and we need to take care of our veterans.
All right, thanks, Deb. And I'll throw in now that I moved to Hawaii when I was 4 years old, so I've been a Hawaii resident all my life. I lived in Kailua, where Tom's wife is from, graduate of Kailua High School and the University of Hawaii. But our next panel member, Ben Fuata, I can tell you stories about him that I probably shouldn't be sharing in public. But I'll tell you, he's one of the best helicopter pilots and general aviation pilots that are out there. Have known him as a fellow guardsman, but he was on the evil side of the guard, the Army side. I was on the good side of the guard, the air side. But we did cross paths quite a bit, especially both being aviators. And he's an exceptional guide and has a pretty good history himself. So Ben, why don't you share some of that with us?
And good evening, everyone. Yeah, Ben Fuata, nothing spectacular. I'm proud number 10 of 11 kids in the family, a very small Samoan family. And so far, so all of us, I grew up in Honolulu, born and raised on Oahu, in Kalihi, and so forth. My military career actually started when I was at University of Santa Clara playing football, and they didn't have any PE or something like that, or easy way to boost your GPA. So I took ROTC. I wasn't a scholarship student. I just kind of took it for granted that I was just going to go there and then go to law school and just continue on and become a lawyer. Well, as things may be, law school is pretty expensive. And my father said if I got into Stanford, he would pay for it. Well, I didn't. I got into University of Hawaii and I got into Santa Clara. So I figured, well, I had ROTC. I went at that. And one thing led to another. As you know, in California, if you weren't were in the ROTC program, one of the least branches for anybody to go to was infantry. Guess what? I chose the infantry only because that was the only thing I had. And so I was going to go infantry. And then one day, the professor of military science came in and says, our scholarship student took a bunch of lawyers together, and he is getting out of the scholarship. He's resigning and so forth. So therefore, he was going to go to aviation school. And so I just so happened to be walking in the office. I took the test, passed the test, and the rest is history. I've enjoyed my time in the military. I spent 10 years, 1 month, 22 days on active duty. I've flown everything, and I was test activity, did a lot of test flights, started the AHIP program, which became the Armed Kiowa. And I knew it was time to retire when they retired the OH-58 Delta. Coming into the Guard, I met some fabulous people. I got to work on the purple side, the blue side, and met with General Osserman, General Richardson, and all of those guys that really look forward. And they taught me a lot about the other side of the house of how we obtain money. And through Senator Inouye, I also worked a lot of resolutions and legislative actions in which now today we have Blackhawks, CH-47s, F-22s, the modified KC-135s, and the C-17s. And it was through the respect and honor of working with Senator Inouye, Senator Dole, and Senator Stevens that they would all sit down, and Senator Akaka. And really, it showed how Congress, when they really respect each other and go beyond, go on the table, a lot can be done. And I wish you, Kai, the very best as you embark on your endeavors, and hopefully you can bring some respect back to Congress like these gentlemen.
Sir.
Yeah, here, and that was well said. And I'd like to point out what you're kind of running in a track here. When we used to meet with Senator Inouye, and I know Ben remembers this, he used to encourage all of us to be more politically active because so few members of Congress have any military background, and he felt that that was a real deficit for members of Congress. And since he said those words, we've seen Mark Takai and Tulsi Gabbard both step up, and now you're stepping up. So thanks for doing that, because I agree, and I think that part of that what would you call it, just good manners and cooperative ambiance of Congress is much better with military people in there that know how to communicate and know that there's a way to get to an answer, and we all work for the same country and the same government, the same constitution, and that's what it takes. So Ben was right on with those words, and you're following through on a legacy that I know Senator Inouye definitely pushed on us whenever he'd had a chance to talk to us. So back to you, Kyle. I'll let you take it from here. I know you got some stuff to show.
Yeah, and just before I jump into that, so I commissioned in 2001. I joined the Guard in 98, 99, and commissioned in 01, was selected to fly F-15s in the Hawaii National Guard, Air National Guard, and went to Air Force pilot training just before 9/11. Flew the F-15 for a little bit. Eventually went to the C-130, made it to the C-17, and spent the bulk of my career in the Air Guard flying the C-17 as a co-pilot, as an aircraft commander, and finally as an instructor pilot. Still in the Guard, and I'm not in the cockpit anymore though. It's too much things to do and too much balls to juggle. So I'm now in the 201st Air Operations Group, and to put it simply, I get to plan all of the missions that I used to fly. And so anything happening airlift wise in Indo-PACOM, I usually am part of that, and just came off a 4-month deployment on the COVID-19 Joint Task Force. And my military career has been fantastic, and they'll let me stay in till 2029, which will be my 28 years of MSD, otherwise known as your mandatory separation date. That would be a dream come true. So I have no intent to leave the National Guard if they'll continue to have me. So
we'll have to get you to Colonel, so that pushes it to 30.
That's 2 years of war college and many long nights. So we can do it, for sure. But what I'd like to do now, since it's we're about 15 minutes in, is I have a couple slides that I want to show, and I hope it'll be a scene setter, and it'll set the stage for this conversation tonight, and educate those that are on and take the time to jump on this. And for those that will watch this that is being recorded later, an opportunity to learn a little bit about the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the almost 20 million veterans that it serves. So I'm going to go back to share my screen, and I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, so here we are. Let me minimize this. So the first thing I'd like everybody to know is the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is the federal agency. It's a cabinet position in the administration, and it is responsible for taking care of the over 20.3 million veterans across our country. This was established in 1921. A matter of fact, the original beginnings of the VA started after the American Revolutionary War. After the Civil War, the government started to provide a pension for those that had served, and then after World War I, is when the Veterans Affairs really began. It was established in 1921. Today, there are three major tenets and major pillars of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. That would be the Veterans Health Administration, otherwise known as the VHA. And they cover everything from our veteran hospitals, our healthcare, our local CBOX, Tripler Army Medical Center. Basically, it's the VA healthcare system. The next major agency is the VBA, or the Veterans Benefits Administration. This agency administers any type of veterans benefits. The most famous, the most important one being the GI Bill that was created in 1944 that allowed the post-war rebuilding of America and the building of the middle class. It also handles veterans, or what they call VA loans, and the opportunity for veterans to get home loans. So anything to do with veterans benefits. Today we have the post 9/11 GI Bill, Yellow Ribbon GI Bill, and different programs for that. And then finally, the third division within the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is the National Cemetery Administration, and they basically manage our nation's most revered and special military cemeteries like Arlington and Punch Bowl and the National Cemetery System. Like I mentioned, nationwide, there are 20.3 million veterans. Of those 20.3 million veterans, there are 2 million female veterans. And here in Hawaii, we have 120,000 of those veterans that call Hawaii home. This is the breakdown across the state of Hawaii. So we have approximately 87,000. The bulk of our veterans live on the island of Oahu. 15,000 live on the Hawaii Island. Almost 10,000 live on Maui County. That would be Maui, Lanai, and Molokai. You might be wondering, what's that number 5 there? Well, that number 5 represents the number of veterans that are in the county of Kalawao. If you don't know what the county of Kalawao is, not too many people do, it is Kalaupapa. And there is actually a county of Kalawao that is in Kalaupapa on the peninsula, managed by the Department of the Interior. And then a little less than 5,000 veterans on the county of Kauai. To put the congressional districts into perspective, within the 1st congressional district, which is basically from Kapolei out to Hawaii Kai, there are 61,000 veterans. And in the 2nd congressional district, which is the rural part of Oahu and the rest of the state of Hawaii, there's a little over 56,000 veterans. Like I talked about earlier, those 120,000 veterans make up almost 10% of our state's population. We have, out of the 50 states, one of the highest states that has a veterans population. We also have a very high number of women and female veterans, and also minority veterans. And here in Hawaii, we have about 11,000, a little under 11,400 women vets, female vets, and we have almost 73,000 minority vets. Issues that our veterans face. There are many issues that our veterans face across our country, here in Hawaii, but some of the main issues are disabilities. Advancements in battlefield medicine have allowed many of our service members to survive their battle injuries, which in other conflicts at a different time would have been fatal. And so many of them come home with disabilities and need things like prosthetics that we'll talk about tonight, those issues. Healthcare is another big issue that veterans face. There's a lot of work to be done there, especially in our rural communities. There are veterans that are homeless, and on any given night since 2009, nearly 76,000 veterans nationwide were homeless. Approximately 136,000 veterans spent at least one night in a shelter. So, we have a major homeless problem here in Hawaii Island, and a significant amount of those veterans or those homeless individuals are also veterans. Suicide is a major issue within our military veterans. 45,000 veterans committed suicide in the last 6 years. September is Suicide Awareness Month. And according to the VA, veterans account for roughly 20% of the estimated 30,000 suicides that happen annually in the United States. And then unemployment. Unemployment rate among veterans who have left military service in the past decade is 11.7%. This is obviously pre-COVID numbers, and it's much higher than the current 8.4% national unemployment rate. So that right now the current unemployment rate is 8.4% across the country, and there are many veterans that are unemployed. And we can talk about how veterans should be maybe given a higher preference for hiring, not just in the federal government, which we already do, but in the private sector, where we give veterans a preference for post-employment after their military tour. This will be my last slide. There are important organizations throughout the country that can help provide help and resources to our service veterans. Some of the most influential organizations across the country are the VFWs, or the Veterans of Foreign Wars. We also have the American Legion. That's another very big organization. Those are some phone numbers there. The Wounded Warrior Project, the NAGIS, which is an organization that advocates and works together with our business community. And the most important thing is to know that there is 24/7 help for veterans out there, whether it's a suicide hotline or a crisis hotline. And that number is 1-800-273-8255. It's available every day, 24/7. It's a veterans crisis line for any veteran out there that needs help. And so these are resources that you can utilize in your community and on your particular island to get information for services. And with that, I'm going to stop my sharing. I'm going to come back to our panelists, and we can now move to a discussion. And we're at about 6:24. So with that being said, I talked about some of the major issues that we have. I'm going to throw it back to General Osserman to start leading about a 20 to 25-minute discussion we could have on some of those important issues.
Thanks, Kai. And I'd like to start off with the medical side just a little bit. And I'd like to ask Tom to, he's been working medical issues recently as a veteran, and just kind of his impression of where we could improve the veterans medical system from his perspective.
The VA is the largest healthcare provider in the United States of America. It's got near over 100,000 employees that work for them. So it's a bureaucracy. And what it takes to navigate that system is patience. But what also is required to navigate the VA system to someone who might have just be getting out of the military, who may have been wounded or had some sort of injury while their service. They need people that have been through the experience that can mentor them through the process. So, we have our state veterans organizations. We have our veteran services organizations like Colonel Lewis's VFW, DAV, American Legion. For me, I started my claim process back in 1991, when the VA was not a really good servant to its former military members. And Ben, you mentioned Senator Inouye. One of Senator Inouye's military affairs persons was General Alexis Lum. And I called General Lum for assistance. And when he found out what I was this is back in 2002, I had been processing this claim for 10 years. So to wrap it up really fast, because we had a veteran like Senator Inouye, that was a senator representing Hawaii, because he was able to pick key personnel out of the community with that sort of experience, like General Lum. It really made it a lot easier for me when I went to my senator for assistance. Within 2 weeks, my claim got processed. So I would say 10 years and 2 weeks. The 10 years I was working on it, and then the 2 weeks that Senator Inouye and General Lum was working on it. And it's unfortunate that it took that. But sometimes you have to go to your senator for that assistance. Now, my experience with the medical side, it's a red tape nightmare. You might get whatever you may have that is service connected. If you're, let's say you're a percentage of 50 or 60%, if you're 100%, you're supposed to get all of your medical through the VA. A lot of times they try to say, no, it's not. They'll overlook it. Yeah, you are a service-connected veteran rated at 100% level. So there are these times where you just have to work with the system. What I'm finding out right now, the difficulty I'm having, and a lot of other veterans are having, Hilo is like the end of the line for VA services for next to the Philippines. There's a CBOC in the Philippines. So next is the Philippine CBOC, our CBOC, and Hilo gets, I think, the worst. Back when they were having the waiting periods, Hilo was the last. You may have heard Arizona, Phoenix, other geographical locations that may have been last as far as service to veterans. It was Hilo that had the longest wait times. So now what Hilo is going through now is a shortage of staff for their mental health providers. I had a situation this past year, a person that I was seeing had an appointment with them, showed up for the appointment, and I was informed that day at the appointment that my mental health provider was no longer employed at the VA. They moved. So one is to keep their veterans informed of what's going on with their particular case. So from that point, I found out, because I had a previous provider that relocated 2 months prior back to Missouri. So our medical staff are all locals, including the doctors. So that's something we don't have to be concerned about. But it's the mental health providers. Most of those mental health providers are from out of state, and they get homesick. They'll stay maybe 1.5, 2 years. The longest I've seen is 3 years, and they'll go back to the mainland. So speaking with Dr. Masters, he's the head psychiatrist for the state, for the VA. He's in charge of the CBOCs. He's explained to me that what the VA is attempting to do right now is transition into telemedicine. So that's where you're seeing that wave now for, at least in Hilo. They're really going to be applying the telemedicine to the veterans here in Hilo. But the problem with that is how do you reach veterans that are in rural areas that they're not connected to the internet? So that's a big problem we're going to see right now in the near future.
Yeah, Tom, I would think that just like in the military where unit cohesion is important, I would imagine that continuity with a mental health provider has got to be critical.
And that's the word I used when I actually made a complaint. I actually found out why this happened and was connected with Dr. Masters, who was very informative. It's more than oversight. And that's, they have to take it, not with a grain of salt, but they have to take it really seriously. So it's changing, it's trying to find, a warm body, TB free to be in that position to service the veterans, but they can't find them. And they're going to have to.
General, what I want to just add in for the people watching is, so here in the Pacific region, we have the VA healthcare system, which is the Pacific Islands healthcare system. We have one main ambulatory clinic, which is the Sparky Matsunaga VA Medical Center adjacent to Tripler. And then outside of that, we have 7, you guys have heard Tom say CBOCs, right? These are community-based outpatient centers that veterans can go to, largely on the neighbor islands. We have 7 of those throughout the state. And of course, Deb talked about, Colonel Lewis talked about the Yukio Kutsu home that we have here in Hilo. We're trying to bring another veterans home to the island of Oahu out in Kapolei. Senator Schatz and the legislature have been working together on that. And we've always talked about having another veterans home over on the island of Maui. But that's pretty much the VA Pacific Island healthcare system that we have here to treat our veterans.
And as far as a hospital, there's no VA hospital that is in Pacific Island VA health system. What'll happen is if you have a veteran that solely has VA medical, they'll farm it out to a civilian hospital.
So Tom, is there any crossover between Medicare and TRICARE for life when you're in the VA hospital system? Or like you say, is that only if you're less than 100% disabled?
You can get the services even if you're less than 100%. You can apply for it all depends on your income. So if you don't have the income, you can apply for it and you can get it, the medicine side. It's easier, I think, to obtain the mental health services, perhaps because you're not dealing with the money and the billing. But to get into the system, you have to have some sort of a connected injury or wound.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, if you don't have a service connection, you can still use the system, but there's a copay with that. If the service connection is granted for that disability, VA will own up to it. But herein lies the issue that we have on the outer islands, especially on the Big Island, is that some of those specialties, i.e., I have people suffering from undiagnosed diseases associated with burn pit, and they need a dermatologist. Well, there's no dermatologist on this island, so having to wait and getting outsourced, and that goes into another challenge in itself. That's so a lot of the specialties, and that's where Tom was talking about the psychiatric care or psychologists. They're in high demand and not enough to farm out. So even though we have this Veterans Choice Mission Act or CITSI, now we go into another bureaucratic with the authorization from your primary care physician outside and so forth, especially those needing immediate care.
And like for me, real fast, is that with my situation where I showed up and the professional was not there, I got a letter 5 days later explaining to me that this particular doctor would be leaving the VA. So it was, I mean, I didn't even know she was leaving. The day I showed up, she wasn't there. And then I got this letter in the mail a week later saying she was leaving. So it's just, they need to tighten up. They got to run a tight ship. There's things that fall through the cracks with the VA.
Got it.
I'm not bad mouthing the VA, but there's things. It's a really big organization. It's a really big system. But there's times
we want to cover some of the other issues, but before we do that, I'd like to ask Deb because Kai mentioned that we have a significant number of women veterans in the state now, and women face some special, unique medical issues. And Deb, could you maybe address those a little bit? Some things that have come into your sphere.
Yes, I would be happy to. I consider myself lucky because I have a dogged determination to find the right person. It's not everybody has that benefit, but women have very special needs. And I remember having a special need, and as was described, we don't have a VA hospital. We don't have a VA hospital here, and women's issues get farmed out to locals, which is the local doctors. If you can find them on island, or you have to go to Oahu to do it. And I remember a doctor was giving me some really bad advice, and then said, you didn't take the certain X-ray within a year, so I've thrown you off my rolls. And there's such a shortage of doctors now. That's the first one. Do you even get a doctor assigned to you is a challenge. Now, lucky for me, I did the Google search with all the doctors, and I stumbled upon an amazing doctor who fixed something I'd suffered with for years with an unconventional way, and it was gone in a week. And all the others are saying it was in my head. The women need to be treated as if it's not, because if it can't be solved, then a lot of times it gets told that it's in your head, and it wasn't. I trust you. So I don't want to paint the picture that it's so horrible. It does take determination. You most of the time, a veteran needs to have someone who's an advocate, either a family member or someone. And we have people like Ben Fuata who will fight and make sure that they're given the care, but he also makes sure that they have the guidance. If they're not going to at least say it's a service connection, if they don't have something in their records that says that, and that they can prove that and provide that to the doctor, then it's not going to count under VA. Just because you served a day in the military doesn't mean you're going to get everything. Although I will say the VA here tries very hard to service as best they can. And then I get mixed reports about certain doctors. I didn't have the same experience, but I think that women will continue to have unique challenges that we just need to be sensitive of and find a doctor who can help with that. Now, it's no different, I think, for the men in many ways, because if they're going to go in for mental health, are you really going to want someone who has no clue what combat service is about, and has no relationship with that? I mean, you have to find the right fit and to be able to have that flexibility. It seemed we did with the choice program, I had a lot more flexibility. And for me, one thing I want to point out, it's not just female related, but it had to do with my eyes. My eyes, I had it well documented. I had a lot of issues because of things that happened in the military with my eyes. And then I was assigned a doctor, but it's a, what do you call, a chronic issue. And then it turned quickly into cataracts. I mean, within a snap. And I had people, we don't take any TRICARE, we don't take this, we don't do that, or whatever. And luckily, I have a doctor who's a neighbor, and his clinic took me in to solve the problem. But unless you have those connections, and that's what I would encourage anyone listening to this who's in Hilo. Yes, we are remote. We choose to be remote. We want to live here. We want to stay here. But we need to continue to work with the doctors, both at Hilo Medical Center and then the whole suite of doctors that are in the community. We don't want to overload them. But I believe one of the things I just want to bring up as the last point is I believe working together, we can address many of the issues that we have. The challenge is that people are doing the one each fights, and we're not communicating well with each other to have a unified front. For eyeglasses, I went into a place that used to have a contract for eyeglasses. It's how I found out that the orthopedics had the contracting. Turns out they were reviewing the contract. Someone had decided that eyeglasses were something you could have a person come in once a month with their kit bag of limited glasses and somehow satisfy someone with eyesight. And like I found out, eyesight can change dramatically, and you don't have vision, you can't drive, there's a whole bunch of things that happen. And I was able to persuade them to allow this clinic, which was right next to where the military were being, we were being seen, and that they would provide a actual suite of offerings so that they could get the right fit for the veteran. And I paid out of pocket, but I know that once the contract was let, that no one, I always try to say, I'm not going to make anybody else have to do the same thing. But these are the things we come up against. But if we're talking with one voice, it's all about people that it gets down to. And I think we have some tremendous people. It's not a blame game. I just want to know why, what happened. And when I heard that orthopedics had all the contract, I said, what's that? I did contracting. We did billions of dollars in Iraq, and there was a contracting office. Why does this make sense? And maybe it does, but you just have to find out whose desk is it on. And if they can't make that decision, who can make that decision? And I went right up the chain to the lead of the Pacific Island. And usually when you share what the situation is, they will find a way to make it work. But I'd love to do it not in that way, but come up with a system so that we can, not by exception all the time, but have standards that can support us so we don't have to keep begging to get support.
I think that's really critical, Deb, because just like Tom said, it's you can get it done going to your senator. I mean, I've seen it happen, and I know people that work in the congressional staffs that, they can make miracles happen, but that's just for a couple people. The system shouldn't have to go to those lengths to get
but sometimes
they
don't know, and that's where my expertise is. I'm going to share what's going on. Are you going to tell me this is the way you do business? And I will tell you 99% of the time, there's something that we don't see that's happening that they don't have control over, that you have to free up for them so they can do what you need to do. It's not bad people. They're trying to make it work. And I think that people love to blame people. I just want to know, okay, what's going on? There's got to be something. There's got to be a good story here, because why is this happening? And then you find the people who can do it. Like I said, I got Ben, and now I know that Tom, there are people who've been through it. They can help you either coach you or make calls or do something that can expedite it and make sure you get the care that you need. And certainly during COVID, it's 100 times worse.
I'd like to, go ahead. I was going to ask either Ben or Tom, just a piece of advice that I got before I separated from the military is to get a full copy of your medical record, and how critical that is when you start dealing with the VA. So maybe a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the other panel members. Good advice.
I had a spreadsheet that I made up. It had every body, and then I tabbed through my whole records. You have to get your records to know what you have. And the better advice is that before you leave the military, is that if something, most of us don't want to go to the doctor, but if it's not documented up there, then we have to hunt against it.
And that's one of the things. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kai.
No, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I found to be a challenge, and that's after when I left the Hawaii Guard and retired, I went out and I went to work for Sikorsky. While in Houston, I got to work with some good veteran service officers who really taught me the ropes of what needed to be done. And that was through the Disabled American Veterans. So one of the things that I wanted to do upon returning is to pay forward, to pay back some of the things. So when I came in and I rejoined again with 3830 and engaged, and Deb can tell you this, she was a commander at that time. One of my first things is I didn't want any rank or anything. I just wanted to be a service officer. And so I was so focused that I was the first outer island person they ever sent to the National Accredited Veteran Service School. And I ended up there. So right now, I am the only one outside of Oahu because I found out that the guys were coming in from DAV once a month. You cannot service soldiers, airmen, and veterans once a month and hope to be successful in their veterans claim. So now what I do is I do a lot of benefit briefing. I write action plans, and I have another person that I'm trying to get certified. His name is Alan Hirioka. We double team. We can, Tom, come out to Kona and provide that service through a phone call. So now that you have our contact number, give me a call. My job is to help veterans navigate the arduous VA system. And we work with three things. Number one is we help them locate an event through medical records or anything if they had a Purple Heart and so forth. You need an event to happen. Number two, you need a current evaluation. It doesn't have to be from a military doctor, but it has to be current on a chronic condition. It can't be an acute, it has to be chronic condition, and you have to have an on. And number three is you need to draw that nexus of the current disability or debilitating disability to that event that happened. And if you get those three things, we can be successful. So our job is to help veterans build a case. And now, I shouldn't say thanks to COVID, because of COVID, we don't mail in, and I can do direct submit to VA through community. I do it through our VetraSpec, direct submit, a digit to digit system. I can send it directly to the Central Mail Portal, or I can go through the stakeholder enterprise. I also am waiting for VA to give me authorization so that when I get a veteran, all I need to do is type in if they filed with VA, and I can look at their records at the VA or the Veterans Benefit Management System, get into that, and then find out where they're at so that I can help write an action plan of where we need to go.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to hand it back to Kai, Senator Kelly, for a second.
I just wanted to double
comment
off what Colonel Lewis said in terms of our female veterans, because like I said, we have 1.3 million active duty service members. 17.5% of them are female service members. Many of them have went to Iraq and Afghanistan and not just experienced war and a very strenuous combat environment, but 15% of those deployed female service veterans have also suffered from sexual assault. And that is a alarming statistic. One of the things I think that's really important is that Congress was working on is the Deborah Sampson Act that would increase access for gender-specific healthcare for our female veterans and service members. And it would start to eliminate those barriers within our VA facilities, and it would provide and enhance more privacy and improve the environment for care for our female veterans. So I think that is really, really important as well, and something that I would very staunchly support if given the opportunity to serve in Congress. Thanks.
All right. We only have like 10 minutes left, a little bit around there, but I wanted to cover suicide, unemployment, employment, and homeless. But let's talk about suicide first, because I actually, in terms of exigent issues, I'd say that's probably one of the more pressing issues we have right now. And it's connected to unemployment and homelessness. So, Tom, could you again lead us off a little bit and talk a little bit about the suicide issues with veterans?
Yeah, sure. So last year I was very honored to be on a panel on PBS Hawaii with Kai had mentioned a veteran last year who passed because of suicide. His wife, Felipe Salas, who works out of the Hilo Veteran Center. He's a psychologist, frontline with PTSD. And while, it's one small venue to speak about suicide, and this being Suicide Awareness Month, Mental Health Awareness Month, what I've personally learned is we as veterans, if we know we have a problem and we're being responsible and we're handling our own business, such as I mentioned, I go see a doctor every 2 months. I see a psychiatrist. I've been through some issues in the military. Hey, at one time it was like, this guy's damaged goods. And a lot of veterans, I've spoken to a lot of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. They have this belief that, they believe that they're damaged goods, but they're not damaged goods. They just need to reboot their brain. And all it takes sometimes just sitting down with another veteran to do that, or going into the vet center and speaking to someone like Felipe, or if they have to, go to the CBOC and either see a social worker that's at the CBOC that deals with PTSD, or then maybe you can go and see a psychiatrist where the psychiatrist deals with the medication if it's that serious of a case of PTSD. But it's all about not vilifying a person because they have a mental health issue. And they talk about this, you have a Purple Heart because you were shot or wounded. Well, you don't get a Purple Heart when you see your buddy get blown up in a Humvee, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life. But you're going to need some help at some point down the road in your life. You're going to need to go talk to somebody about it. And suicide, it's not the right answer. And we just need to be more aware of veterans that are in trouble. And like Ben, he's on the front lines of dealing with people's claims. He's in a perfect situation where he can steer people to those offices where, like for the vet center. The vet centers are in the community. They're not part of the VHA, Veterans Health Administration, and they're not part of the VBA, Veterans Benefits Administration. A lot of people will go to the vet centers, like in Hilo, and assume that once they go in there that they're going to get some sort of a claim. They're not. They have to go through someone like Ben. They have to go through a veteran service officer. And I was a VSO trained by DAV, by Danny Soto, but he moved away and I couldn't get recertified. Just wanted to say that real fast.
I just want to say how, deeply concerning and alarming the veteran suicide rate is in our country. Here in Hawaii, it's right at about 20%. That's way too much. Nationally, it's at 30%. This will be one of my top issues if having an opportunity to serve in the Congress, is to address veteran suicide, post-traumatic stress disorders, mental health disorders. Like Tom said, both of us had a mutual friend that committed suicide last year, left a wife, left 2 young boys. That's not an easy funeral to go to. And this was somebody that I knew personally, I saw frequently. And as much as I'm exposed to suicide awareness training as a current member of the National Guard, I never picked up on any of the signs that that individual maybe was trying to convey. And, I always think about what could I have done. Just had almost another situation this past weekend that I was directly involved in. So this is real. It is real. It is here. And it's something that we need to address.
I think you're right, Kai. And, Ben, I talked a little bit before about the kind of unique character of veterans. They're very independent people for the most part. They're I don't want to say they're proud, but they feel like they should be able to take care of themselves. They don't want to reach out for help. So when you have the stigma of suicide kind of holding people back from getting help, and then you have the military tough it out, kind of mentality a lot of military veterans have, it's kind of the double whammy. They don't want to reach out for help. They don't want to ask for help, and maybe they don't want the stigmatism attached to them. So can you kind of give us your perspective on that?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, you have that stigmatism, but a lot of the veterans are too proud and they draw back. They're too proud. They're too proud to admit or ask for help or even beg. Deb knows all too often. She give me a couple veterans that I had to actually beat the bush down in Glenwood, go down there. These guys were living out in a lean-to. And you could tell that they were emotionally disturbed. But yet, even in their feeble moment, they still didn't want the help I was offering because they were too proud. So a lot of it is just sitting down, talking stories, and just kind of assuring them that you understand that, and then brought a little bit of groceries, kind of get them out of their shell. But it's all, no case is ever the same. Everybody's different and so forth. But for the most part, they also have fallen on deaf ears where they tried to get, some assistance back in the archaic days when you tried to fight, and they were turned away or always neglected. And one of the current things I'm finding out, even the veterans that have the help with this COVID, try getting a hold of VA. Right now, we are 66,000 cases behind, and that's just for appeals. 66,000. That's not taken into consideration. They're all on hold right now. So you have veterans pending appeals and so forth. Even the veteran, the VBA office they have at our federal building and the one on Oahu, they shut down operations. They're telecommuting. So you call that number, you'll get a rotary number that'll get you all over the world. People get frustrated, and that's what's happening. You're just not reaching. They say they have the system in place, but because of COVID, you can't get a hold of it.
Hey guys, we can go on for a few more minutes if you're willing to stay on, because I think these issues are super important, and let's not worry about the time. One thing I want to say, and I'll hand it back over to Tom, is we often think about the service member, but who's often forgotten is the spouse and the kids. We have service members that come in with PTSD. They bring that back to their families. And, I know there's conversations in Congress about extending some type of support or benefit to spouses and their children that have to deal with these struggles as well. So let's not forget about them.
No, that's an important point, Kai, because I told Tom earlier that Marines are important because my dad was a Marine. I can tell you as a dependent, when my dad was in Vietnam for 13 months, I probably need some kind of counseling just from that. Being a dependent, when, especially at that point in history, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have social media, we didn't have instant communication. I was getting cassette tapes from my dad, listening to Vietnamese rockets being walked down Da Nang flight line towards his hooch, and that's the feedback I got as a dependent. So you're right. The whole reason I'm in the Air Force, not in the Marine Corps, was because being a dependent of an active duty person just wasn't. I didn't want to do that to my family. Didn't want to do it, and said didn't want to move. I didn't want to move all over the place, and just wanted to stay put. I'll do my duty in combat if I have to go. Not a problem. I'll do my training if I have to train. But dependents really do go through an awful lot more than I think most military members think and appreciate. So I'm not sure that falls into the realm of veterans care, but it certainly should be a consideration in the future.
Yeah.
So,
but that actually falls into the realm of veteran service officers, because it's incumbent upon us to stay abreast of what the benefits are and out there. I've dealt with recently, if you guys, back in 2019, January 2019, House Resolution 299 allowed for Blue Water veterans to finally file for presumptive diseases associated with Agent Orange exposure. And I will tell you, it was very humbling working with these spouses where they've been trying for years, and they got all of the records together, and now their husbands have passed. And then all of a sudden, after that House Resolution 299 bill passed, now they wanted, okay, we need to know the name of the ship that they were on. And so they had to go back, and it was finally, we finally got that settled. But you can imagine, because a lot of these wives, they had nothing to do. The husbands, when they came back from Vietnam, they were in their own world, and they never spoke of it. And so the wives did not know about it until their diseases started to surface. And then when they were trying to take care of it and claim it, now you have all these issues, and then now they're gone, and they're trying to reconstruct their husband's career, which they had no part of it, because they were kept out of it. That's what it was.
So about suicide, last year, they were including veterans. So those are people that have gone off on a foreign military campaign. They were including current active duty military, and they were including the National Guard and Reserve components into the suicide count. So you used to be hearing this 22 a day, 22 a day, 22 a day. So this year, or I should say for the 2019 National Veteran Suicide Annual Report, they augmented, or they changed that. They removed the active duty component, reserve, and National Guard component soldiers and servicemen from the count for veterans. And I don't know why it doesn't matter to me. If you're in the service or were in the service and you commit suicide, you commit suicide. So now it's dropped down to 16.8 veterans per day are reported as committing suicide every day, 7 days a week. And like Kai was saying, it's a national problem. It's above the average of average citizens that never served. But where it's really showing up is with female veterans, Deb. So in 2017, that was the last report. That was the last time they got documentation, or the last time they put it together for a report. They had 43.2% of female veterans committing suicide by handgun. So there are a lot of statistics. If you go into the 2019 National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report, you'll see all the stats on all the suicides, what sort of suicide, what was the method of suicide. It'll give comparative studies to veterans versus female veterans versus civilians. So it's a very informative report. But I don't know why they had to separate active duty and National Guard and Reserve assets. If you're serving in uniform or were serving uniform, it's a problem. To make it sound like it's less, I don't know why the VA did that. They separated the components, but it's happening every day. I've known several people who committed suicide since I've been out of the Marine Corps. And it's forever. And, can we get to that one person? Can we be that phone a friend for that person? That's my goal, is to be a phone a friend. That person calls me up before they actually think about doing something silly. And that's how we have to be involved in other veterans' lives. And like Ben, you say you have these people that are isolating. Well, that's one of the elements that they look at before someone commits suicide, is that isolation. So if just by encouraging them just to come in and see someone like Felipe Salas, it's a plus. It's a start in the right direction.
Well, why don't we, General, in the last, we should wrap this up by 7:15 at the latest, so that's about 10 minutes, is touch a little bit on homelessness. I'd love to hear from Colonel Lewis, Deb, on the VFW and what we're doing locally on a statewide level, and then we'll bring it back home and just really briefly touch on what a special day tomorrow is for our country.
Okay, Deb, you got it right from the man there.
Thank you. I guess to answer the question, combines what we were just talking about. I mean, I'm going to just mention suicide. When I first arrived at Hawaii, I had investigated suicides, 1984. It broke my heart. It also told me, as we've gone through, and I've lost people in my unit, we have even tagged people in my unit for it, but someone in trouble, it's kind of all of these issues are combined. I try to do a very comprehensive, more like universal look at an issue. These indicators that are popping up is not just one area, it's multiple areas. Could be the homelessness, could be the unemployment, could be it's a combination. But if we focus on only the weakness, we miss the strength, which is what we have to build on in order for them to get better. That's why I'm doing a business called mental toughness. It's It's if you keep playing on the string that they're weak and that this is awful and this is terrible, it's true, that's a fact. But the most successful programs are the ones to help them focus on what they want and being able to express themselves to people who are doing it and trying to find out, well, what's really going on rather than to just label it, well, this person is homeless, this one's unemployed. And the final piece is you have to bring the community and businesses together. You have a lot of nonprofits that if they're not communicating well with each other, then they're going to be stepping on each other. They're going to say they're doing the same thing, but they're stepping on each other. And we found this all across the country. There could be people saying, well, I do this and I do this. Have you ever talked to each other? No, we haven't talked to each other. The way to solve every problem, I have a friend who wrote a book, Enlightened Leadership. He solved 100% medical care for a county. I want to say it was West Virginia, but they read his book, they did what he said, and they solved it in that county. Then they invited him to speak. Okay, there are solutions out there, but what it was based on is sharing the load, educating people on what are the indicators, what are the things that you can do. I found most people want to help. They want to help. They obviously don't understand how easy that is. And one of the quotes we had, if you can help, offer it. If you need help, get it. But if you need help, get it. If you can help, offer it. And guess what? People can do both. The people who are needing help in one area, if they can find one other area that they can help someone else, even if it's just cleaning someone's yard, like we have a lot of senior veterans who used to be able to handle their yard. Now they're not able to do that. And so things are falling apart. We have someone that Ben identified, Dan, who goes up and he's helping a very senior veteran up in Volcano. One by one, then you get an indication of, are they depressed? Are they having issues? Is there a way that we can help? Because sometimes it's just a connection away. But if you're not having conversations, if we're not having conversations with our neighbors, and we can do it virtually, we can do it on the phone, and we can work with veterans. Our challenge with our veteran organizations is the 15,000 don't join veteran organizations. We have only a small handful. And while our VFW is almost 5,000 in the state, you know, we have the American Legion, and we all work together. We meet together, we talk together. I just had another VFW come in to give us money to help with our veterans at Yukio Kutsu, because our place is struggling because we can't have income now. Our fundraisers are not here. So we're struggling through this virus through a lot of ways, but I'll go back. When we work together, it's empowering and powerful. And to not label someone as that's a person with a horrible problem, but hey, what are the great things this person has done in their career? What are the resources they can still bring it? And oh yeah, I think, how would you like to talk to so-and-so about this issue? And you hear it, but if you keep addressing it and focusing only on that problem, it'll stay there. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, Deb, it makes a lot of sense. And I would add too that if you give that person a chance to help someone else, now they have a reason to live.
Yes. And I would tell you, when I first started out, one of the reasons I wasn't going to help in veterans, if you bring a group of veterans together and you make the discussion issue, tell me all your problems, that's going to be exactly what you're going to get. If I say, tell me, what is it you need in order to achieve what you want to achieve? What is it you want to achieve? Okay, what do you need to achieve it? The questions that we ask will get the answers that we're getting. And so I like to ask, what is it that you want? What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? If you could have one thing, what do you think would make it best for you? And you make a little victory on that. you build on that. But we can't build on the negativity. And oh, by the way, suicide is a national tragedy and crisis. Mm-hmm. The kids, the latest statistic, like 25%, like the teens have thought about suicide. I mean, this is a huge, huge issue. But again, how do you keep people busy? How did we stay busy? Do we focus on, suicide ideation? We did it in the Guard in Washington State. Sometimes where you talk about it could incite the ideation. So this is not a simple, it's a direct, we think everything's direct. It's not, this is not, but people are very acute and sensitive if they know that someone's not Pono. I love that word, Pono. If you're not Pono and you detect, this is a time to engage, not a time to say, oh, they need to be by themselves. So let me find out a little more. Let me talk about it and see if you can make them laugh. If you can't make them laugh, like there's a guy who's the head of the Happy Neighborhood. He had a guy who refused to laugh. He wouldn't let go though. He kept working with him, working with him, working with him. And then he invited him to do something. And later he found out the person confessed to him. He goes, I was going to commit suicide. That's where I was. If you can't get someone to smile or laugh, that's a great way. If they're not sleeping, that's another indicator that something's off. And the other chronic issue we have is the unfunding of any mental health for the community. If we don't support that and have something that makes it so it's not a stigma, all these other issues stem from that, because your self-worth, what you're focusing on, all those things. So I think there's a huge opportunity here. There is a huge opportunity for us to work together and continue to do it. And I look forward to what's next, because I know Kai's got the energy to do it. Right?
Well, no, something you said, Deb, was the community and business and the nonprofits in our community are so instrumental. I would be remiss, you said the Yukio Okutsu veterans, so I might be remiss if I didn't outline and highlight the Boys and Girls Club of the Big Island and Chad Cabral, who just in the last few days took over the entire meal program at Yukio Okutsu, have been providing 40 to 50 healthy meals every night to the workers there. So that's the kind of, we're all in this together effort that we need.
I talked to my husband. He's the president of the board. He talked to Chad. Chad said, because I let them know that other people in other areas are trying to blame the staff. This is another one. How do you protect our veterans? Everybody do what's smart to protect our risk. And I said, the staff are not quitting like elsewhere in the country. They quit. The staff is hanging in there, even at their great risk, and their families wanting them to be home. And so, Chad, it seems simple, but having one hot meal a day, when you realize their environment is, they're working incredible hours and they don't have time to go shopping, to cook, they may not even have access to it at this point because they're self-isolating, right? So when you find that out, there's someone, Tonya Ozone is another one in our community. She dropped off the case. We're doing it once a day, and she's doing it one time a week where she's dropping it off. And that woman does more things every day. We have people in the community, but if we share the load and we get people say, well, what can you do? How would you like to help? What's one thing that you can do? And you break it out, even for doctors, for dentists, for everyone. If everyone just said, hey, you know what, I'll take one case, we would be so much better off. Sorry, get enthusiastic, but it works. I've seen it work.
Homelessness, we could discuss that at another time.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Because there's homeless for veterans.
Yeah.
But it's a broad problem for the entire community.
Right. I think that's something that we'll look at maybe having another one. This is a great discussion. I think we've covered a lot, and I really appreciate everyone who has jumped on. Like I mentioned earlier, tomorrow is a very significant day in our country's history. I'll share my screen, and tomorrow is September 11th, 2020, and just 19 years ago, our nation came under attack, and on that day, almost 3,000 people died, and it's a day that many of us on this call here, we'll never forget where we were. Let's just briefly go right around and maybe take just 30 seconds before we wrap up tonight. We'll start with Deb. Where were you on 19 years ago?
I was in the Pentagon. I was on the advising top military leaders on how to keep people safe in buildings from terrorist attack. And if my predecessor hadn't been working with the people, that plane hit the one side that had been renovated, and we would have lost many more. I lost a lot of friends that day, but we went into 24-hour operation, and we should never forget that there are people trying to harm us 24/7, and the sacrifices of the people that day and elsewhere should not be in vain. We need to stay vigilant. This is something that we have to pay attention to, but I'm very grateful for that, the time that I had and what I learned.
Ben?
I was in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, attending the Command and Staff General College at that day. And we just got through doing a RPT test and all that stuff. And I was just walking through the gym and just so happened to be looking at a TV, and I saw this plane hit the building. And so I stopped because it was superficial. And I asked the person on the treadmill, I said, "What movie is that?" And he goes, "It's not the movie. It's actually happened." And we just all froze and watched. And so, I will tell you that there were a lot of people that I went to school that day that their families were in New York and that they lost some lives. And I watched them try hard to call their family members and comforting them in the college. So I mean, freedom is not free. There's a price to pay. And God bless everybody, and God bless those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives, and everybody else in the aftermath for our freedoms.
I was patrolling Waikoloa. It was about 2:30 on it was a Tuesday morning, and the dispatcher came over and said, "Hey, 433, that was my beat assignment number. Go home and turn on your television. A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center," but they didn't specify because they didn't have a TV in dispatch either. So when I got home, I called. I said it was an airliner. It was a 767 that went into the side of the tower. I'm not sure which tower 1 or 2, but it went straight into the World Trade Center. And then when I got home, the second one went in, I cleared my house and I started waking up police officers. All the police officers that worked or lived in Waikoloa, every one of them got woken up and they all got called into work. That it was early. We felt alone because here we are in the middle of the Pacific. We don't know what's going on. And everything got shut down. I don't know if you were living here, Kai, at the time, or if you were deployed, or it was shut down.
General?
Yeah, I was actually in Las Vegas. My father had passed away the July prior, and so I was with my stepmother to help with the estate and things like that. On my way to Peterson Field, Colorado, to help stand up the Air Guard's space mission, Hawaii Air Guard space mission, with at the time Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Okahara, who just pinned on 2 stars, I think, or will be shortly. At any rate, I was stuck, like Tom said, in Las Vegas because no planes were flying. And I was stuck there with a bunch of Hawaiian or Aloha airline pilots that were from my tanker unit and my former fighter squadron unit that were also stranded in Las Vegas. But then when I got back to Honolulu, when things finally opened up, I was responsible for putting all of the Army and Air Guardsmen in all the airports because there was no TSA. And my responsibility was getting building and meals and transportation for all the people at Molokai Airport and Lehue and Kahului and Princeville and Hilo and Kona, between the Army and Air Guard soldiers that went in. We had to have places for weapons, and we had to have rules of engagement set up, and we had to have JAGs briefing people. And so that was my aftermath. But my one thought would be, like Deb says, one of the things I learned in the Air Force was nobody ever said it'd be fun, easy, or fair. Life hands you a lot of challenges, no matter who you are, and the tougher you are, and the better you can get through it, and the tougher you can be to help other people get through it. That's what you got to do, and it always turns out that you learn a lot from it, and you also gain a lot from it as a human being, and that's what we ought to remember. And like Ben says, remember the people that serve. That's a special trait that I think all service members, if they don't have it when they go in, if they just went in for the benefits or the college tuition or whatever, certainly by the time they finish basic training and tech school, they understand what service is all about. And
Sure.
it only gets stronger after that. So back to you, Kai Kahele, Senator.
You know, I was about 6 months into Air Force pilot training at Columbus, Mississippi. I had commissioned 6 months prior, and I walked in. I was flying T-38s. Walked into the squadron and 8 o'clock in the morning, and the rest of my Air Force aspiring pilot cadets were huddled around a TV. The first aircraft had already went into the first tower, but I gathered around the TV with them and saw the second plane go into the tower. You know, I never forget that. First thing I did was I got into a telephone and I called back to Hilo. Dad answered. And like you, Tom, at 2:30 in the morning, he was up watching TV. And my first question was, have you talked to Mom? Because my mom was a flight attendant for United Airlines. She was on a trip on the West Coast. And although I knew she wasn't on the East Coast, I just wanted to make sure that he had talked to her and that she wasn't one of those planes. And of course, you know, one of the United Airlines planes went down as well. But, you know, three years later, I found myself in Afghanistan, and life has never been the same. And so, you know, tomorrow we raise our American flag wherever we are, and we honor, you know, the people that perished that day. We think about the first responders. We think about the families that lost loved ones, the survivors on that day. But, you know, we are a resilient country, and we are a resilient people. And, you know, we've faced tragedy before, but we always come through. And that's something that we all have within us. So, you know, I just want to thank everybody and all of you tonight for joining us. For our panelists, I sincerely appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation, and thank you all so much. Join me next week, Thursday. I'm going to talk about the environment here in Hawaii and how special our waters are, our oceans, our precious natural resources are to Hawaii, and how we all call this place home, and we can keep it that way for future generations that grew up here. But with that being said, thank you all for joining this discussion tonight. I really appreciate it. And God bless all of you, and God bless our country. And have a great night.
Good luck in November.
Thank you all.
Kai.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.